You've really put the cat among the pigeons with this one, haven't you? You like to do that with your books about the various people that you've written about over the years. And you're pretty categorical. Right from the get-go, you believe Jeremy Corbyn isn't just allowing anti-Semitism to flourish in the Labour Party, now he's leader, but has always been anti-Semitic himself. Yes,
and I think what is particularly important is his story about his activities when he was in the Tailors Union in 1973. And he claimed, recorded interview, that all the employers were scumbags and crooks and cheating their employees out of their wages at Christmas. The employers were all Jewish. And that was a complete lie.
But wasn't that just the fact that he was attacking the employers?
Yes, but it wasn't true, because the union records and the union leader at the time who I interviewed said it just wasn't true. It never happened. No employee was denied their wages.
What do you say to those who defend him, who say that actually he may be anti-Israeli to a point, but that's very different from being anti-Semitic?
Well, I think that's fine. I mean, I'm anti-Israeli as well often, but there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem with him is that when he approved the mural, that terrible mural showing
Hackney.
The Hackney Tower Hamlets by Ockeren, which showed the blacks, the Monopoly game on top of the blacks and Jewish bankers playing Monopoly.
Yes, it could have been commissioned by Goebbels, couldn't it?
It could have, and he approved of it. He defended it. He looked at it, and it fitted his idea of the Jews having a worldwide conspiracy to take over the world. But can I just say one thing? My book is not only about his anti-Semitism. The real reason I went for Corbyn and wrote this book is because he's a communist. He wants to change this country fundamentally. John MacDonald said it for him when he said that once they get into power, the change in Britain will be irreversible. They will confiscate wealth, they will completely make this into a communist country, and that has always been his lifelong ambition, ever since he came back from Jamaica in the early 70s.
I know that critics of the book, such as yourself, pick holes in it and say there are certain things in it which simply aren't true, and we could go through that list now. But how do you cope with incontrovertible allegations of the kind that has just been described about the mural in the East End, which was a horrible, horrible anti-Semitic mural? And Jeremy Corbyn sent a sympathetic message to the artist when it was cleaned off the wall and said he was in good company. I mean, how do you defend that? That's tricky, isn't it?
There's no defence of it. I wrote a piece at the time for The Guardian saying that was clearly an error, and I'm glad that Jeremy apologised. But I don't think we can just brush over huge factual inaccuracies in a book that is not just being presented here before any presenter I've had a chance to read it has been serialised in the national press. I think it's incredibly important we take those kind of factual issues.
OK, well, what are the things that you say are factually
I thought we'd just start by doing a couple of basic fact checks. So you write in the book, for instance, let's start with an easy one, that Jeremy Corbyn slept in on the morning of the EU referendum results and went straight to breakfast with his team. Do you think that's true, Tom?
Yes.
So what's this photo? I mean, I had a look online because I did some research myself, and there's a photo of Jeremy Corbyn at 7:29 a.m. on BBC News on College Green. I don't know which camera it is. Can show it around to doing an interview. Another one, as an example, you say that Jeremy Corbyn was
always... what you're saying is he didn't sleep in, he was on telly.
It's just a factual inaccuracy. He was there on TV. Another one, for example.
Well,
I can carry on.
Well, but I suppose it's an example of where he got things wrong.
I don't think it's wrong at all. I mean, just because he's produced a photograph, I don't know whether I just...
Let's do another. You said in your book that Corbyn was silent about sexual abuse allegations against children, in Islington.
Absolutely.
So what is this... I mean, I did some research. I went to an archive. This is the Islington Gazette from October 1992.
It happened in the mid-80s.
So what does it say here?
In the mid-80s.
What does it say here? That Labour MP Jeremy Corbyn joined Liberal Democrats?
7 years later.
But you said he didn't...
7 years later.
Did that in your book?
7 years after it came out, he protested.
We'll do one more.
No, let's stick with that. Let's stick with that. The social workers in Islington went to Jeremy Corbyn to tell him that children were being abused wholesale in that borough.
Right.
The local newspaper editor, Tony Alcock, also told him it was happening. He ignored them consistently.
Right, but
7 years later... we'll stick with you, but it is true.
But it is true.
Here's your date. Let's do
one more. Let's stick
with this, Michael, because this is really quite important.
OK.
Because it is always the same with Jeremy Corbyn. Right. Every time someone makes an allegation against him, he comes up with an excuse or a story which is untrue. And this is exactly...
I've proven it.
But you haven't proven it.
Let's do one more. Let's do a final one.
You make it the last one, because that one didn't go too well, did it?
I think it did. I'll do one more. It said in your book that Momentum members have been deselected MPs, Blairite MPs, in constituencies including Hastings and Mansfield.
I didn't say deselect. I said they're trying to.
OK, do you know who the MP for Hastings is?
Well, that's Amber Rudd.
So how could Labour members be deselecting
Because
a Tory MP?
They're trying to deselect the candidate.
But you said the MPs. What about Mansfield?
I didn't say that. You haven't read the book, so you don't know what's in the book.
Because you didn't give it to journalists to read before you came on the show, Tom.
Absolutely. So don't say I said that in the book.
I'm a journalist and editor. It's my responsibility to...
Let's get back to Jeremy Corbyn now.
Sure.
You've interviewed him several times.
Yes.
You've bumped into him, but you haven't actually interviewed him.
I've never met him.
But you've done obviously you've done a huge amount of research into him. Do you like him?
No. I don't like him because he's a communist who actually wants to destroy this country. I don't like him because he's an anti-Semite. I don't like him because he doesn't tell the truth. And most of all, I don't like him because he's a misogynist. If you listen to his wife, the two ex-wives, his treatment of them was appalling. And yet he poses as this cuddly animal. And yet if you talk to the people who worked with him in Islington, in Haringey and Hackney and Hornsey, he was quite vicious. His deselection policy...
And ex-husbands, ex-partners on both sides of the gender divide, they're not necessarily the best witnesses, are they?
But they are witnesses. They are witnesses.
One can hear axes grinding. I mean, are they the right people to go to for information?
Well, why not?
Well, because they may have an agenda.
He hasn't denied what they said in the Mail on Sunday, has he? He hasn't actually said their allegations, but he didn't provide enough money to feed his children, that he was very, very unfair and unkind to his first wife. He didn't deny all their allegations.
Do you think he regrets now, politically, he regrets some of the statements that he's made in the past, some of the people that he's been associated with? Because when that was happening, he didn't think for a split second, and neither did anybody else, that he'd get within a finger snap of the leadership. And then it happened with the change in the leadership rules, and suddenly Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party. Do you think he looks back now and thinks, oh, I wish I'd shut up a bit?
No, I don't. I think he's a very stubborn man who believes in his principles. And what's very interesting about him is that he doesn't ever say he did anything wrong. Whenever he says, I regret I said something, it's only that he made a mistake, it's come out now, but not that he actually believed it. He actually is a man who does believe in what he actually says. That's the one thing that you can take for granted with Jeremy Corbyn. What he says, he means. And so when he says he believes in a communist society, he means it.
I mean, we know that Tom does sometimes make mistakes, because you came on this show and said that Prince Charles carried a toilet around with him, and Prince Charles and everybody. They absolutely deny it, Tom.
Well, the eyewitness was there.
They've always denied it. Anyway,
but he's not going to admit it, is he?
Well, I don't know. If it's true, he might well. But the point is, though, isn't it, Michael, that regardless of small detail and inaccuracies, because Tom hasn't met him, the charge is at the core of it. The incompetence, the extreme left-wing politics, the communism and the anti-Semitism is surrounding Jeremy Corbyn anyway. And what Tom's book does is crystallise that. So at what point is he going to deal with these issues properly? Well,
let's deal with those 3 points you raised: incompetence, anti-Semitism, and the third one, remind me. Communism, left-wing progressive. Fine. So in terms of incompetence, this is a narrative the Mail on Sunday, the Mail and other papers have long pushed, that the Labour Party has no idea what it's doing. The reality was, in the last general election, that was what was said about the Labour Party. They came from tens of points behind in the polls.
And lost.
But so also took away the Conservative majority. In terms of radical politics, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you take issue in the first serialisation with the fact that Corbyn was comfortable living in the sort of house he didn't have great aspirations for wealth, and you took some level of offence for that. I think Corbyn is very reflective of the majority of British people who don't desire huge amounts of wealth, who aren't greedy. But
is he the best leader the party could have?
Well, at the moment he seems to be, yeah. And according to opinion polls, the Labour Party once again neck and neck, sometimes
No, that's not true. They're sliding.
No.
That's not true at all.
That's not true. The last poll came out of the Observer this weekend, and it said they were neck and neck.
The last opinion poll done, which was the same poll that actually predicted that we'd have a hung parliament, so it has a reasonably good track record.
We saw the
predicted that the Tories would get a small overall majority, and also every other poll in terms of Jeremy Corbyn's popularity shows that it's on the slide. He's down to 17%.
It's just not what the polling says. We had this issue with Fiona.
Well, we'll argue about it all day.
We could do later on. But the fundamental premise...
We write everything, don't they?
The fundamental premise...
Black is white and white is black. It is never the facts that don't suit them. They always deny it. It's always the same.
We can go through more of the inaccuracies in your book if you like. I'm baffled. That the point is that Jeremy Corbyn...
because it's embarrassing.
Jeremy Corbyn, as Labour leader, is popular. He is doing well. Seemingly people want to keep him in there. We've had 2 attempts to deselect.
OK,
he's had 80% of Labour MPs didn't want him as leader.
Sure, but the Labour membership does. One of the largest political parties in Western Europe, 500,000 people, twice they have voted him as Labour leader.
You didn't actually deal with the anti-Semitism things, which is the reason why MPs may well today resign.
Well, I'd say that he has. If you look at what's been done already, the Chakrabarti report was
It was
been
a whitewash.
implemented.
OK.
It was a whitewash.
OK, we can go through. I hope, and I take anti-Semitism incredibly seriously. I'm Jewish.
You
I'm a
clearly
Labour Party
don't.
member.
You're a self-hating Jew to actually
I'm a
represent...
self-hating Jew.
You must be, to represent Corbyn the
I don't
way you
represent
do.
Corbyn. I'm a
You do,
journalist.
to defend him. You're not. You're a spokesman for Corbyn.
Well, I'm not. I'm employed by... That's an incredibly offensive thing to say.
To deny that Corbyn is anti-Semitic...
That's an incredibly offensive thing to say.
It is offensive,
Both
it's
to call me a
true.
self-hating Jew, but also
You
to
must
imply
be.
that I'm somehow in the employ of anyone but people, newspapers like The Guardian, where I
Which
work
is very,
for
very
regularly.
pro-Corbyn and has been pretty hostile
I'm gonna
to
Okay.
Jews.
stop
Well, I
engaging
was
with
hoping for a
everyone.
bit of a row on this one, but, you know, it's a bit tame, to be honest with you.
I check my
Thank you both
Good
very
to
much indeed
speak to
for coming.
both of you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.